Hi guys! So today I'm into chapter 4 of abnormal psychology, and I kind of wanted to touch the perspective of cognitive therapy and cognitive theories. So cognitive perspective focuses on the way that people's thoughts influence their emotions, okay? And here I'm going to read a small piece. It says, cognitive perspective, a theoretical perspective in which it is assumed that abnormality is caused by maladaptive thought processes that result in dysfunctional behavior. And that goes right with DID, because when you have DID, you have this dysfunctional irregulation of alternative states, emotions, thoughts, smells, touch, everything, somatic symptoms. So next, let's talk about the theories behind cognitive perspective. And it states here, psychological disorders, according to the cognitive perspective, are the product of disturbed thoughts. By changing people's thoughts, cognitive psychologists believe that they can also help clients develop more adaptive emotions. Now, I'm going to touch a little bit on why I enjoy CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. And that's kind of what that process does, is it helps to adapt to emotions that you're not used to having. So let's give an example. As a child, I was taught that crying was shameful, embarrassing, and basically, my parents could do that. I'll give you something to cry about. But that was based on back then. That's how it was normal as my parents were raised to treat their children. So they didn't know it was wrong at the time. So now, while I'm in therapy, I still have alternative states that are very set in not showing an emotion, including me. But yet, what's fascinating is, according to my therapist, the smaller alters are more adaptive to showing emotions and crying and feeling needs that I am afraid to do. Now on here you also see this little chart, and it basically shows how those thoughts happen, okay? And it goes from dysfunctional attitude to experience to automatic thought and the negative emotion. And this is a process, as you can see, and this happens in alternative states, and it happens with you as well, which could be reason to have a switch, or the stress is too much and you leave and all of a sudden somebody else takes over because the irregular emotions are too much to handle. Now it states here, particularly problematic according to the cognitive perspective are automatic thoughts. Ideas so deeply enriched that the individual is not even aware that they lead to feelings of unhappiness and discouragement. Automatic thoughts are the product of dysfunctional attitudes, which are negative beliefs about the self that are so deeply ingrained and difficult to articulate. So I'm sure you're kind of like, ooh, this makes sense, which is why I love reading college level books and getting into this, because it helps you, the listener, get a more easier understanding by me explaining it as best as I can to bring down the level of wording so it's easier for people like you and me to understand. In people with psychological disorders, these beliefs take an irrational form of views about the self and the world that are unrealistic, extreme, and illogical. These irrational beliefs cause people to create unnecessary emotional disturbance by sticking rigidly to the musts and then pushing themselves needlessly. They then engage in unnecessary self-pity and refuse to admit that they need help. So that's where even the misdiagnosis of borderline personality disorder can be put into a person before their assessment for DID. Quite a few people, I'd say 60 to 80%, are diagnosed with BPD because of, like it states here, their irregularity of their emotions and anger and all that. But if a person specializes in trauma disorders or specializes in DID, they'll be able to pick up the difference between BPD and DID, okay? So I found that part very interesting. And based on myself, I'm still dealing with irregular emotions in my therapy. So I guess all around, I want to say that having somebody that specializes in CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is very important and very vital with somebody who has DID. But they also have to have a little bit of speciality in age regression therapy, because age regression therapy and CBT can work together for your smaller alternative states or childlike states, or even in some of the younger teens. These are vital things that can help your healing process go a little bit faster. So last, I want to talk about the treatment in this book, treatment plan basically in this chapter. And it states, if dysfunctional thoughts cause dysfunctional emotions, as the cognitive perspective proposes, then changing a person's thoughts should alleviate the distress that they cause. In cognitive restructuring, the clinician attempts to change the client's thoughts by questioning and challenging the client's dysfunctional attitudes and irrational beliefs. The clinician also makes suggestions that the client can test in behavior outside of therapy sessions. For example, the clinician might give the client who is afraid of dogs the assignment to visit for 5 minutes with the neighbor's dog, while at the same time practicing relaxation. Now, I can give my own example of this. I have issues where I'm afraid of things, and my therapist will first off show me my view of something as being irrational or immoral, and she calls it black and white thinking. So there are times where I will 100% blame myself as a 5-year-old for something I did, yet she'll twist it with some cognitive behavioral therapy and say, well, let's change the thought process. Let's say that's your 5-year-old daughter, an instant change. I cannot blame my daughter for something like that, so why should I blame myself? And I actually get kind of angry with her when she does that, because I'll use the excuse, well, I was different. I was different than my 5-year-old daughter. I was different. I was older, even though I was 5. There's that thought. And trying to keep my stress level down to process through that without switching is very difficult. So next it talks here, in cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, as the term implies, clinicians focus on changing both maladaptive thoughts and maladaptive behaviors. Clinicians incorporate behavior techniques, speech impediment, such as homework and reinforcement, with cognitive methods that increase awareness by clients of their dysfunctional thoughts. Clients learn to recognize when their appraisals of situations are unrealistically contributing to their dysfunctional emotions. They can then try to identify situations, behaviors, or people that help them counteract these emotions. The goal of CBT is to give clients greater control over their dysfunctional behaviors, thoughts, and emotions. I love this. This is great. There's another thing in here that you can look up yourself. It's called acceptance and commitment therapy, which is called ACT or ACT. And that's mentioned in here briefly, but I don't have that, so I'm not going to get into great detail about that right now. I have to do a little more research on it. But altogether, this is interesting and very helpful to those that are starting out, because cognitive behavioral therapy can be very stressful. And sometimes you can question it. You can be like, well, I don't think it's working because I feel sad or I feel upset. Those are normal emotions to have in cognitive behavioral therapy. You're supposed to feel uncomfortable because you're learning something new that makes you uncomfortable. It doesn't mean to quit the therapy, and it doesn't mean that your therapist is not doing his or her job. It just means that they're putting you in something new that you have to adapt to. And it's so vital to have this therapy with your disorder, because it can help change not just your thoughts, but your alternative state thoughts, especially littles. Littles have these beliefs set in stone, because a parent will say, nope, this is this. And that little is so set on those beliefs. it's vital that you work with your therapist and give them time to help you and guide you through CBT. So that's all I have today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. You're more than welcome to use it in your therapy or have your mental health care professional view it. That's all. Loves. Bye.